The Exorcist Believer is a 2023 horror film directed by David Gordon Green and written by Green along with Danny McBride and a couple other people that contributed both to the screenplay and to the stories behind it. The film follows two girls possessed by a demon, and it is up to their families to determine how to exorcise said demon. The film is also the technical loose fifth or sixth sequel to the classic 1973 horror film The Exorcist, which just so happens to be my favorite movie of all time. So, no major shoes to fill. Here's the thing, alright? There has been a lot of bashing of this movie, and I don't blame people, because it technically took the name, the music, the characters from the greatest horror film ever made. Or even if it's not your favorite movie, one of the most acclaimed horror classics ever. Up there with Jaws, The Shining, Alien, all of these classic horror films, especially from the 70s. They hold a special place in the hearts of a lot of people, and David Gordon Green had previously tackled the Halloween franchise, which, despite it also being one of my favorite classic horror films, I was a little more forgiving of because Michael Myers just killing people is like a rinse and repeat idea, so doing different stuff with him and the town of Haddonfield is something that I think could be played around with a bit. I actually am very pleased overall with David Gordon Green and Danny McBride's take on the Halloween trilogy that they just had. And I'm gonna say it, I'm a Halloween Ends apologist. I hated it when I first saw it, rewatched it once or twice, and my opinions have since changed. Even though I didn't love it as a sequel to the previous Halloween movies, nor is it the best when it comes to Michael Myers and his portrayal, I think for the film that was being presented, I enjoyed it, and it offered something different besides just the same old rinse and repeat. And so I thought about that when going in to see The Exorcist Believer. I wasn't trying to see a movie that I wanted to see. I wanted to take in the movie that the filmmakers wanted me to see. And I knew it wouldn't hold a candlelight to the original film. All I wanted was a decent David Gordon Green 2023 horror film that happens to share the same name. A name that cost Universal and Blumhouse $400 million. And apparently will have two sequels, making this another horror trilogy. I wanted to love this movie. I wanted to at least like it, to have horror films for the next few years that I would enjoy to see around spooky season and get into, sequels to my favorite film, and at least carry on the legacy or the vibe or characters or something. No? Nope, it couldn't even do that. This is one of the most frustrating movies I've seen in a while. There have been a few demon exorcism movies this year, and they have all been very frustrating to me. I think the worst offender was The Nun 2, a movie so bad that I didn't even bother to review it here on the channel, because there's quite frankly nothing for me to say. It's so mediocre, it's so generic and by the numbers, it's literally like a coloring book for horror. Michael Chavez, just, I would say quit while you're ahead, but you're not really ahead at this point. I am sorry, man. I don't want to tell you, brother, but just get out of the Conjuring verse, please. Just, I'm out of the Conjuring verse, I'll tell you what. But I digress. The Pope's Exorcist really had a terrible ending. Just, I'm not a fan of exorcism movies in general, to be frank. The Exorcist is like a lightning in a bottle scenario. It's a perfect film. William Friedkin and William Peter Blatty put their minds and creativity together to make this awesome movie. You can tell that it's from the perspective of both someone who believes, being Blatty the Catholic here, and someone who didn't at the time believe, which was Friedkin. And you get their kind of relationship in there because the movie is ultimately about faith. and seeing how these characters come to faith, have lost their faith, or regain it. It really is a drama with horror elements, and that's what they should have done with this movie. And they just couldn't do it. The Exorcist Believer is like a horror film made for TikTok millennials. This movie has so many cuts in it. The editing is so atrociously OCD, or ADHD, or whatever you want to call it. It just is non-stop. And what makes the original Exorcist and so many great horror films like it set apart from these modern horror films that just can't hold a light to them is that it lets the film breathe. Not even horror films. Films in general that just let the scene breathe. Let the characters be in a situation and just see how it unfolds and plays out.
What did you do?
Did you do that?
But especially for horror, to get in the atmosphere, to feel the suspense, the dread, to let it linger. I think that's why Hereditary was such a great modern horror film. It let you soak in what was going on. The Exorcist Believer's like, oh, we're here, what's happening? Who are these characters? I don't even know who they are. Even the main dad guy, which the actor is a solid actor, by the way, and maybe the actors were the only redeeming quality of this movie, the actors and the makeup effects. Other than that, yikes. But you have all these different characters, and you don't even know what they stand for. There's a weird blend of religions in this movie. The classic Exorcist film is a Catholic movie. I myself am a Christian. I'm not specifically a Catholic, but I respect the rites and traditions that The Exorcist established and how the Catholic Church kind of hid them in the closet but took them out for certain scenarios and situations. And here, it's like all the Catholicism is just shoved to the side. You have this weird hodgepodge of religions that just don't mesh. And even if you wanted to go that route, because there are other exorcist rites out there, there are other ways of dispelling evil spirits. I'm cool with that if you want to diversify the palette a bit. But do it in a way where it actually makes sense. None of this made any sense. And it really is mind-boggling that that was the final decision for the film. It doesn't even seem like it plays by its own rules. And throughout the movie, you get this sense that, well, you don't get the sense, they straight up verbatim tell you it, that the point of this movie, or the theme, is unity. You know, looking past religion and having unity to stand behind a common cause, going against evil. I can respect that message. I think it's a powerful message, but one, don't beat us over the head with it. And two, the movie's story does not reflect unity. If anything, at the very end, all of the characters feel really divided. Oh, man. Then you bring in these legacy characters. You bring in Chris McNeil and other characters that I will not mention if you do want to see the movie and don't want full spoilers, but you could probably take a wild guess at who else might make a brief cameo, and I mean brief cameo. The characters, especially Ellen Burstyn as Chris McNeil, are not used in any great regard. In fact, it's downright disrespectful to the Chris McNeil character, the decisions that are made here, both in terms of how laughable her scenes are, and how her character doesn't even have the faith or the wisdom that was set up in the original film. It's all lost, and she seems so miserable and so upset all these years later. You're telling me all these years have gone by and she's still obsessed with that exorcism? And she seems so upset that she wasn't in the room. She wasn't a priest! It's really astonishing, honestly, that so many people, you know, Blumhouse and David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, all these people making it, and they have all made quality stuff. I'm not just bashing them, I'm bashing this specific movie. That they all watched, you know they've seen the original, and they just couldn't figure out what made it work. It's really strange. It's really strange. I think the main thing that killed the movie for me, besides the weird hodgepodge of religions and putting in Chris McNeil and having this weird The thing about Chris McNeil is this, plainly. She mentions in a scene, it's the power of belief. It's not necessarily that these things are real, it's just that if you believe it. Chris, your daughter's head spun 360 degrees and she levitated in the original film. You don't have any semblance of spirituality or faith after those events? I don't think so. But that's just me. Just besides that, it was the over-the-top editing that really took me out of the movie. There were no scenes in The Exorcist Believer. No scenes. Just little snippets of things. Oh, I'm going to the hospital. Oh, what's that? Oh, cut. No, we're over here. Oh, we're in the woods. What's happening here? Oh, there's something. Oh, I found something. Go, cut to the next thing. Just stop. Let a movie play out. Can we do that? No. I guess not. Even if they wanted to go the whole quick cuts route, maybe that's just a style on behalf of David Gordon Green, which is a possibility, the story itself feels rushed. You meaning to tell me this father, who at the beginning of the film for the first 25-ish minutes is a very pronounced atheist, or at least agnostic, does not believe in the spiritual. One scene goes by, or two scenes go by, he gets the book that Chris McNeil wrote about the exorcism that took place in the 70s. And you're telling me on a dime, now he suddenly believes in all of this stuff. The entire original film is about all of the characters coming to a sense of faith. Specifically Chris McNeil and Father Karras. The whole film it takes for them to have these realizations. He gets it in one scene. And then in the same regard, these girls who at first are possessed and they don't realize it, and then, you know, they start like wetting themselves like in the traditional film, and then 2 seconds later they're completely like eradicated by Pazuzu and look like zombies. Which the makeup's cool, by the way. And the girls did a fine job. But you're telling me that in one notion they suddenly changed like that? It's unfortunate because there is a decent setup here with these two girls possessed and kind of them pinning it on one another maybe, and the families being at odds. You have a family, or a father at least, that's atheist, and then this kind of Christian conservative family. There's an interesting dynamic in here, and it's just not utilized at all. I could rant more. Perhaps I will on a future video, podcast, what have you. Will I see the film again? I don't know. It was very frustrating. Very rushed. Didn't use the legacy of The Exorcist well. I don't even know why it needed the rights. Well, I can tell you why. To make money. But it's not going to make back $400 million. I don't even think the trilogy will make that back. So far, this movie's made, I think, $40 million worldwide. And with all of these terrible reviews, I don't foresee it getting a lot more. Maybe like 60, 70. But if you multiply that by 3, 21, we're still not going to be getting anywhere close to $400 million. That's it. That's all I have to say about The Exorcist Believer. I would give it probably a 1.5 out of 5, being generous. Maybe I'll see it again and have a Halloween Ends and change my whole perspective. Maybe it's just because I'm, you know, comparing it to the original, and I'm trying my best not to. But it literally is basically a remake of the original. It's using the name, it's using the classic characters. It's hard not to, and it stinks. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.